Now, in TNT, we have an interesting situation of a country that can be quite conservative at times. All of the people that go to church, temple, mosque, pray, and quite liberated or liberal at times. If, Exhibit A, Carnival, Exhibit B, every fete leading up to Carnival. So where does that now leave certain aspects of our society that, technically speaking, with regards to different ideologies, we see throughout the rest of the world they face certain amounts of challenges, certain amounts of discrimination, right? We've had these guests before, not these representatives specifically, but we've had CAISO before, and I'm pleased once again to welcome the day after, I have to admit, it's a day after the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia. We have with me Dr. Angelique Nixon. She is a director of CAISO, and Mr. Kellog Nkemakolam, who has many titles under CAISO, and I am sure does a lot of work for them. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for joining me.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having us today.
So, of course, you all have a whole program with regards to wholeness and justice. It speaks with regards to discrimination and a whole host of other things for the LGBTQ community in TNT. But before we get into those statistics on the report and the work that you've done over the past year, and I'm sure I might have asked a version of this to the representatives last year, but in TNT, I do find it strange. It's interesting. You could see signs just in everyday life of intolerance, but at the same time, it's not universal and consistent. I don't know if you're following me. Like, I have seen people be quite open with regards to their sexuality, with regards to their identity, and they've not necessarily been discriminated against at every corner. So in this country, I'm just on the outside looking in. How is it? Are we a tolerant nation? Are we an intolerant nation? Are we somewhere in between? Is it that intolerance kind of, it's in specks scattered about?
Well, I can get us started on that. I think based on our work and our experiences and my, I'll talk about my own in particular, I do think there's a mixture. I don't think it's as simple to say that we're intolerant or that we are fully tolerant. I do think that there is a mixture. And I do think that different moments create various kinds of opportunities for LGBTQ plus people to be visible. I also want to say, in no uncertain terms, that LGBTQ plus people, people with diverse genders and sexualities, have been here a long time across our region, across the world. We are not new. We are not foreign. And I think that is the most important thing for us to consider as we talk about issues of discrimination, because it's not everywhere. It's not even. It's complicated. It's complex because of many factors. And, in our work with CAISO's Wholeness and Justice Program, we deal with, by far, the largest amounts of discrimination are, in fact, by institutions, structural discrimination that LGBTQ plus people experience, from public health care to state agencies, to social welfare, to, accessing housing or goods and services. And a part of that is because we don't have state protections on the basis of LGBTQI plus identity and or any protection based on sexual orientation or gender identity. So, the state-sponsored, essentially, discrimination that is allowed to happen because we don't have those protections is something that we deal with and work with our clients on a day-to-day basis.
Now, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I was just gonna add to what Angelique just said. I think it's in talking about issues of discrimination experienced by LGBTQI plus people, it's more than just, delving or inquiring about whether tolerance or intolerance. I think what's important is discussing whether or not systems enable LGBTQI plus people. And so it's, again, referring to what Angelique is saying about these very structural and systemic systems. Are they enabling to, LGBTQI plus people equitably enjoying the full extent of their human rights? And the answer to that is no. There aren't protections that exist that really look at the issues that LGBTQI plus people face, and which is why we do the work that we do and produce the report that we produce, to sort of inform the kind of advocacy and direct states and different stakeholders as to what can be done or the gaps that exist in terms of ensuring that we have an enabling and inclusive society and systems for LGBTQI plus people.
Well, so we have an Equal Opportunity Commission, of which this is not, I'm not sure, is it that the Commission does not recognize the difficulties that LGBTQ plus people might face, the potential discrimination? Because at the end of the day, that's what it sounds like. We have systems in place where this base alone, this basic commission that we have, technically should be sorting out things like this. I would imagine that's what it's there for, to prevent people from being discriminated against for criteria that has nothing to do with whatever service you're trying to access.
Well, you're raising the exact point of what we're discussing today, which is that, yes, we have an Equal Opportunity Act, which is in fact a very progressive piece of legislation. It's been hailed as something that's really important for guaranteeing and protecting the rights of every person living in Trinidad and Tobago. But it actually excludes people on the basis of sexual orientation. So while the Equal Opportunity Commission has been they've joined forces with us and other civil society organizations to say, yes, we need amendments to the Equal Opportunity Act. Because what happened when it was passed back in 2000, the description defining sex actually says sex does not include sexual orientation. So we have actually passed a piece of legislation which has not been amended to date, and the commission has called for several amendments. It excludes and therefore is an anti-discrimination piece of legislation that is exclusive and in fact sustains and allows there to be legal forms of discrimination against people based on sexual orientation. And so if you have a case, let's say you've been fired from your job for being gay or lesbian, or same-sex loving, and you go to the commission and you file a complaint which you should be able to do based on sexual orientation, they will turn down your case and say, no, we are sorry, we cannot take your case because it is not covered under the Act. Now, for issues of gender identity, it's simply not there, and so that one is more kind of silent. So what CAISO has done for the past over 10 years is launched a campaign that we continue to press and we continue to put public information out about. We continue to put forward an agenda that aligns with this call for amendments. We've worked with the Equal Opportunity Commission plus 20 other civil society organizations to call for amendments to the Act to include several things. We have Add All 3. You can see Kellogg's T-shirt, Add All 3, amend the EOA. And the three statuses that we're calling for is age, health conditions, and LGBTI status. And we're not asking for anything special. We're not asking for more rights or extra rights. We get that a lot when we have these conversations. We're like, oh, why are you trying to get more? No, we want justice for everyone. We are very much about human rights for all, dignity and freedom and protection. We're not asking for anything special. We want to be able to live with freedom and dignity. We want to be able to walk with our heads held high and access the same services without being fear of retribution or discrimination like anyone else.
In the interim, though, we have developed a model LGBTQI plus workplace policy, and this is with consultation from the Equal Opportunity Commission. And so, what the LGBTQI plus workplace policy does, it creates, or it is policy that's sort of enabling and provides guidance as to different things within the workplace that employers can, they can create or develop to ensure that the LGBTQI plus people amongst them, feel safe and feel comfortable within that workplace, and there are protections for them in that workplace. And from that, we've been able to develop multiple a toolkit and multiple, multimedia trainings and guides for businesses who signed on to the policy and who are interested in creating and enabling an inclusive environment for their employees. The toolkit is very multi-angular. It provides guidance to employers. It provides guidance to LGBTQI plus people in the workplace as well, and what their rights are as they are within the current legislative framework. What their rights are in relation to work, in relation to the workplace, in relation to how they ought to be treated, as well as it also creates space for non-LGBTQI plus employees and how they can be allies and how they can advocate for and with their LGBTQI plus counterparts. So it really tries to take that kind of holistic perspective to ensure that, while we, I guess, quote unquote, wait, there are things that exist that are trying to fill the gap. So we really encourage businesses, both in private sector and, NGOs and those kind of organizations to, have a look at the policy and to ask what they can do to ensure that their environment is enabling and inclusive. And so that's one of the services that we have offered as an organization.
Well, I find it interesting that you're wearing a t-shirt that says add all three. It's not just LGBTQ, it's age and one other group you're considering. What's the third one?
Health condition.
Health conditions. Because one of the questions that I had coming out of your presentation earlier this week was, have you all looked to try to perhaps partner with stakeholders for other issues? So with the Equal Opportunity Commission, I believe there are people who have already come out and said that for disabled people, there are gaps with regards to how they are covered. And now you yourselves are not looking to just advocate for your group only. You're looking at other situations where there are gaps, where there are potentially failings of the system, to try to say, well, look, let's try and fix all of these things. Have you all tried to perhaps maybe partner up with other advocacy groups because at this point now, it's some of the issues I realized I took away. It's not necessarily an LGBTQ issue. It is failings of the system in general. And this you guys just are one group that are part of many groups of people who are potentially suffering because the system is not really keeping up with the demands of overall society.
Absolutely. We've been partnering with civil society organizations for over a decade. We have very strong partners with organizations like Network of NGOs, with WINAD, with Caribbean Human Rights Center, with Coalition Against Domestic Violence, with IGDS, with other LGBTI organizations in Trinidad and Tobago. We have worked with trade unions. We've worked with the Equal Opportunity Commission itself. One, as Kellogg said, to put forward, we partnered with the AOC to create our workplace policy, and we did that in direct, response to the fact that the government has not made any changes to amend the EOA, even though there have been promises year after year, and we continue, as Kellogg said, to quote unquote wait, but we're also demanding, because what we do strategic engagement as well with the law. We have a legal team, and we figure out ways to get people redress, and that's what Wholeness and Justice is about. And our Insights report from 2022 really reveals the ways that our work around justice seeking enables most vulnerable and the most marginalized in our communities to figure out ways to seek redress. When the year before, our 2021 report revealed that people were much less, they were not sure, we really lived kinds of fear around what we can do. So yes, we've partnered with many folks, and our communities experience multiple forms of oppression. We don't, and we think about our intersectional and intersecting identities all the time, and that's one of the things that is revealed really through our work. So, for example, we partner regularly with the Deaf Empowerment Association because we have a program helping to train people in Trinidad and Tobago Sign Language, and we've been doing that for over a year. And we're helping to create more sign interpreters who are sensitive to issues of gender and sexuality. And therefore, at our events, we have sign interpretation as a regular practice, as an enabling practice, because we want to demonstrate what does it look like to think about justice for all. You have to show it.
Well, we're more or less, sorry, Kellogg, we're more or less out of time, but I'll hopefully we could have enough that both of you can answer this. Because, Dr. Nixon, you just said basically that you all have been hearing or been receiving promises year after year. So this is just a basic question, but I do have to ask, because this is not the only issue that's like this, I think, with regards to the duality of our conservatism versus our progressiveness or liberalism in the nation. Is it just that this topic is something that politicians and the wider public don't want to talk about? They just don't want to have the conversations, out of sight, out of mind, nothing to do with me?
Hello.
Oh, yeah. I think my concern isn't about the conversations that we're having that the public is having, or at least the thoughts. I mean, those are very important aspects of things, and that informs the way that legislation is shaped. But my main thing is just that as a society, we have people, there are people, and everyone, just by virtue of being a human being, is entitled to human rights. And so that is unequivocal, that's universal. That's not an argument to be made. Human rights are human rights, and everybody has human rights. And so there is the responsibility that the government has as the primary overarching kind of institution that guides the country in this way. The government has a responsibility to ensure that everyone enjoys and it respects, protects, and fulfills the human rights of everyone. And that's what needs to be happening. That's what we need to see. That's what we need to pay attention to, and that's what we continue to advocate for. That is the government protecting and ensuring that the human rights of LGBTQI plus people in Trinidad and Tobago and everyone in general continues to be respected, protected, and fulfilled.
Exactly. And that is our, that's what our work is. And I want to invite all of the listeners and viewers today to please check out our work on CAISOTT.org if you want to know more about what we do at Wholeness and Justice. Our report that we've launched for Ida Hobbit, recognizing the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia, which is a very important, significant day. We launch our report every year to let people know about the work we've done in our Wholeness and Justice team. And over the last year, you can find it on CAISOTT.org and follow us at CAISOTT, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And you can find the report and, review it, and also contact us for more information. Because as Kellogg is saying, we do this engagement with the public, but we also send our information and reports to the government. So we are advocating both, through the government and wanting them to listen and be advised by us in a significant way. But we're also engaging the public because we recognize that there's ways that we can advocate for changing laws, but we also are working around social and cultural norms, which I think you're also asking us about, right? It's a two-prong, it's a multidimensional approach to advocacy and human rights. And we continue to ask the questions and engage media and engage the public. But at the same time, I do think that it's important for us to recognize that just because we are considered a minority community does not mean that we have to, quote unquote, that everybody has to agree. Governments are supposed to protect the rights of those most marginalized. If we waited for dominant groups, if we waited for, if we wait for dominant groups who are in power to protect the rights of those who don't have power or who are marginalized, we would not be where we are today, right? We have to fight. You have to fight for justice. You have to fight for freedom and demand rights. And that's what we see any marginalized group who's done that. And we continue to fight those battles, especially in this post-colonial state that we're in, where colonial structures still impact us every day. Systems of classism and racism and white supremacy are everywhere, and they impact then how we think about gender and sexuality. So I want to say that, I think this idea that we have to reach some kind of consensus or agreement on human rights, if we waited for that, we would still be dealing with colonial rule, right? So we have to also say that it's okay for a minority group to advocate, and that governments and systems and structures should be created and sustained to promote and protect the rights of all.
Well, I will just end with saying my concern is that, unfortunately, governments tend to follow the popular consensus. So that's the catch, right? How many governments are going to have the courage to maybe say, well, no, perhaps you need to look at it this way, or perhaps we need to consider this direction. Because at the end of the day, folks, if it could happen to any of us, no matter how much of a minority it is, then to some extent, it's only a matter of time before it very well could happen to all of us. So I will leave that there. I want to thank you again, Dr. Angelique Nixon. Mr. Kellogg, sir, I will spare you my poor attempts at linguistics. From CAISO, thank you for fighting for just one could argue. We have many of our marginal communities, but important nevertheless.